Most Richmond homeowners, they think they know what they own. But right now, some of them, they're waking up to a harsh reality. Their land, it might not legally be theirs. And it's not because of unpaid taxes. It's not because they did anything wrong, but because the courts, well, they just handed down a decision that could override their title completely. And to make things worse, that ruling, it isn't just about one neighborhood or a handful of homes. It's a legal precedent, one that could make certain properties almost impossible to sell or to refinance or to even use as collateral. I'm talking about deals falling apart, mortgages being denied, and owners finding out that they can't access the equity that they have spent decades building. And the worst part? Well, a lot of people, they still don't realize that they're affected or that the market is already reacting behind the scenes. And so in this video, I'm going to break down what actually happened with the land title decision, how it's disrupting financing, ownership, and resale in parts of Richmond. And I'm also going to cover 3 hidden risks that might already be creeping into your own property, even if you're not technically in that zone. If you're a homeowner or you're planning to buy or sell anytime soon, you need to hear this because this changes everything. So let's start with what actually happened and why it's turning into such a big deal right now. Back in August, something happened that didn't make huge headlines at first, but it should have. The BC Supreme Court, they ruled that the Cowichan tribes hold Aboriginal title over roughly 5.7 square kilometers of land in Richmond. Now, this isn't some hypothetical or symbolic recognition, all right? The court found that the land had been wrongfully granted as private property, and they said that those grants were defective and invalid. So in plain terms, Aboriginal title takes legal priority. That means that the Crown, and by extension homeowners, may not have had proper legal ownership to begin with. So what does that mean for people who are living there now? Well, it means that the ground beneath their homes is, well, legally speaking, in dispute. And it means that their title, the very document that proves ownership, it might not hold up. And while the ruling doesn't immediately force anyone out, it does trigger a massive wave of uncertainty. And when the legal status of your land starts getting fuzzy, well, the ripple effect, it shows up very fast. This isn't something that, stays buried in the court documents. It starts hitting real people in real life really quick. So let's talk about what's already happening on the ground, because this isn't just legal theory. It's real families trying to renew their mortgage, sell their home, or tap into equity, and then suddenly they're hitting walls that they never saw coming. So let's start with selling, because technically, yes, you can still list your home for sale. Nobody's saying you can't do that, but closing a deal, that's where it's going to get tricky. You see, some homeowners, they have received letters from the city of Richmond warning them that their legal ownership could now be in question, not because of anything they did wrong, but because of the court's ruling. The city of Richmond, they sent a letter to a group of 150 property owners warning them that this case could compromise the validity of their ownership. Now think about that. You're getting ready to sell your home, and suddenly there's this legal uncertainty over whether you even own the land underneath it. That's enough to spook any buyer, and more importantly, any lender. And that's exactly what we're starting to hear. According to a Global News article, even people going through routine financing are getting flagged by their banks. And it's not because of their credit, but because of where their home sits. And I quote, "We've heard stories about some people going through the refinancing process right now, and mortgages and banks are uncertain with how they're going to proceed with refinancing." So right now, that really calls into question, can you get refinancing on your home? And that makes sense. Lenders, they don't want legal gray zones. If there's even a chance that title ownership could be challenged, banks are going to pull back, and fast, simply because they don't want to be caught holding the bag if that title ends up in court. So even if a buyer loves the home, if their bank won't loan on that deal, well, that offer is going to be going nowhere. And the same thing goes for refinancing. If your mortgage is up for renewal, or you're trying to access equity to renovate, or maybe to help a family member or pay off a debt, suddenly your lender is more than likely going to hit pause and your file is going to go under review. Well, you're being told something along the lines that we're just not sure yet. And it's not because of you, but because of where your property sits. And when you're already dealing with high interest rates, inflation, and tighter lending criteria, that kind of uncertainty, it hits hard. But it's not just about the money, it's psychological too. The letter from the city, it warns that the court has declared Aboriginal title over certain properties, and that this may compromise the status and validity of your ownership. That is one sentence that carries a lot of weight, because if you've spent years building stability, paying down your mortgage, and counting on the equity for retirement, hearing that your property ownership might be compromised, that shakes everything. Your future plans, your ability to move, downsize, or pass wealth on to your kids. And suddenly, that is all up in the air. And here's the hard part. Most of the people affected, they had no warning. They didn't break any rules either. And they didn't buy anything unusual. But right now, they are stuck in limbo. And no one can tell them when, where, or how this is going to get resolved. And here's the part that most people are missing. This isn't just a Richmond problem. This is a warning sign and potentially a roadmap for what could happen in other parts of BC. I mean, just look at Kamloops. There's a major Aboriginal title claim underway right there as well. One that covers over 1 million hectares, including parts of Sun Peaks and surrounding areas. And of course, now that we're seeing how things are unfolding in Richmond, that case, it's also getting renewed attention. Because here's the thing. This isn't isolated, all right? There are unresolved land claims all across the province. And now that we've seen a court decision that directly challenges private ownership, lenders, insurers, and policymakers, well, they're all watching very, very closely. Even if your property isn't in one of these zones, the ripple effect, it could still touch you. And so later in this video, I'm going to show you how that uncertainty is already creeping into nearby areas and why some homeowners might face restrictions without even realizing it. So what do you do if you're affected or even just near one of these zones? Well, you're going to want to start with the right advice. You're going to want to talk to a real estate lawyer who specializes in Aboriginal law title and property law. You don't want to guess here. Don't assume that your title insurance is going to cover this. A lot of times, it doesn't. So you want to get clarity on whether your property falls inside the affected zone or close enough that it might get flagged by lenders. And then you're going to want to speak with your mortgage broker or your lender directly. If you're coming up for renewal or thinking about refinancing, you're going to want to ask, would you approve financing on this property under the current circumstances? And their answer is going to tell you a lot about how lenders are treating the situation and what kind of a risk profile they're applying to your home. And if you're planning to sell, do not wait for the market to try and figure this out, all right? You need a strategy that's going to account for longer timelines, a smaller buyer pool, and tighter lending rules. And you might also need to be more flexible, whether that means being more creative with your deal structure, longer closing periods, and sharper pricing as well. Okay, zooming out here for a second, understand that this isn't just about adapting in the short term. There's a bigger picture here that's starting to take shape. So, and just to be clear, this doesn't mean that these homeowners are out of luck, not even close, all right? The city of Richmond and the province, they're already appealing this decision, and so is the federal government. In other words, this decision, it isn't final. The appeals court, well, it could result in a more limited ruling or in some cases, a full reversal. Now, in the meantime, there's also the possibility of a settlement where the government, they work out a deal with respects to the Indigenous rights while also giving homeowners some certainty. And that kind of thing, it's happened before and it's not out of the question. Yes, it might take a little while. These things, they don't tend to get resolved overnight. But just because there's uncertainty, it doesn't mean that everything is falling apart either. It just means that you've got to make decisions based on facts and not assumptions, because even in a market like this, there are still good opportunities out there. You just need to know where to look and, of course, how to structure a deal the right way. So no, this is not about panic. It's about staying smart, getting the right advice, and being proactive. And when you understand what's actually going on, you're going to make decisions based on facts instead of fear. You're going to feel a whole lot better and a whole lot more confident. So whether you're thinking about buying, selling, or just trying to plan your next move, that clarity is going to make all of the difference. And here's the thing. This isn't over. Far from it. There is more to come. And some of those updates could really change what it means for homeowners, also for buyers, and really anyone who's trying to figure out their next move. So if you don't want to be caught off guard, make sure you hit that subscribe button. There will be further updates for sure. And that way you're going to stay in the loop and you're not going to miss anything that could impact your plans.